Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, I'm going to show you guys how to make a set of Cole's jaws. There are going to be some of you out there that look at this video and say, what the heck are Cole's jaws? Well, Cole's jaws simply are these. And what they do, or one of their functions, is after you turn a bowl and it has your tenon on the back end, it will hold your bowl securely on your lathe so that you can finish the bottom of that bowl and get it done. The problem is they're kind of expensive, but there is an alternative, and that's a shop-made version, and that's what I'm going to show you today. And what you want to start off with is some half-inch ply. Well, let me start off by saying the type of ply you use here can make a difference. I made an original set a few years back, and I used a ply of poplar, and that's kind of soft, and tell you the truth, it really didn't last very long. So on today's build, we're going to be using a multi-ply of birch. So it's a much harder plywood and will probably serve you well. So to start off with, we're going to be cutting some 5.5 inch squares. You're going to need 4 of them. And with that, we've got ourselves 4 half-inch by 5.5 inch squares. I'd just like to point out that on this particular project, accuracy is important. So make sure that all your pieces are square and that they line up, and that, you know, if your pieces are right, you should be able to take any one of these and turn them, and they're still going to line up perfectly in your group. So make sure that these are square and that they're 5.5 by 5.5. Okay, so the next thing we want to do on all 4 of these pieces is we want to draw a line from corner to corner. And it doesn't matter which corner to which corner, as long as you have one line drawn just like that. So draw a line like that on each one of the 4 pieces. You've got all 4 pieces with one diagonal line drawn on them. And now you want to get your 4-jaw chuck from your lathe. Now the base of all of these Cole's jaws is one of these. Now this is just kind of a cheapie that I use, but it works great, so I won't complain. But what you want to do is you want to remove your 4 jaw sets off of this jaw chuck, and they should be held on in most cases with 2 bolts, and you can just spin those bolts out of there, and then very simply these jaws just come right out of the whole assembly, and it looks like this. Well, this is what you want to remove. So go ahead and remove all 4 of these jaws. Well, now that we have the 4 jaws off, just be careful you don't lose any of this hardware. You'll end up going to your local big box store and searching for new bolts. Ask me how I know. Anyway, what you want to do now is, this is where you need accuracy. You need to measure center to center on these bolt patterns, because we're going to duplicate that measurement onto our plywood blanks. So I've measured this here, and mine center to center is 25/32 of an inch. So you want to check yours and see what that measurement is. Now that you have that measurement, the next thing you want to do is determine where your first hole is going to go. So take one of your jaw sets and make sure that it's aligned correctly. so that the inside is pointing to the corner of your board here. You can see that this is the line here that we've drawn from corner to corner, and you want to lay your jaw chuck piece right there, lining up your corner edges here, and on one of the holes, being the inside one, you just want to mark it. What we're trying to establish here is a measurement to the center of the first hole. So with that now, we have that one marked, and we'll just take a measurement here, center to the corner, and for this one, it's 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do on all of these pieces is we're going to mark in 1/2 inch, and then we're going to mark in, for my purposes, yours may be different, but 25/32 of an inch beyond that, and that will be the bolt pattern now on this diagonal line, and we're going to mark that on all 4 pieces. So just like I said, 1/2 inch in for my purposes, and then another 25/32 in from there, and there will be our marks. I'll just show you that there. Now what we want to do before we go any further is take one of our jaws, line it up, and if you look down through these holes, you should see the crosshairs that you just drew center of both of these holes. So with that now, go ahead and mark all 4. The next step in preparation that you want to do is you want to measure these little machine bolts that you took out of your chuck. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to get the measurements of the holes that you need to drill. So the first measurement you need to take is the diameter of the bolt. And in this case here, I will require a 1/4 inch hole. The other measurement that you want to take is the dimension of the top of the head. And you want to just go a little larger to give yourself some wiggle room. So in this case here, it'll be 7/16 of an inch will be the larger hole for the countersink of this. And now you need to know how deep the countersink is going to be. So go ahead and measure the top of the head of the bolt. And in this case, it's a 1/4 inch. So what we're going to need is a 1/4 inch deep countersink. That's 7/16 of an inch in diameter, and then a through hole centered on that countersink, which is a 1/4 inch in diameter. So we're going to go ahead and drill those holes. Now guys, don't forget here, don't let your drill decide where your hole is going to go. Get yourself a punch or a scratch awl or whatever, and center punch those holes before you go ahead and drill. Now I'd just like to point out that with my particular setup, because I have these cap screws that hold my original jaws on, and they have a flat bottom, not a countersink, I used a Forstner bit to countersink. So for that, you drill the countersink first, and then you still have the center divot punch from the Forstner bit in order to center drill your 1/4 inch through hole. So all of the through holes and countersinks are drilled, and you just want to test them now to make sure that your bolt goes in, that it's just slightly below the surface, and that it still protrudes enough on the back end that it's going to be able to attach to your original jaw chuck. And this looks good, so now I can move on. The next thing you want to do is, I've set my bevel here to 22.5 degrees, and from the center line here at the end where your countersinks are, line up your bevel and draw a line at 22.5 degrees right out to the end, just like that, and then just like this on the other side at 22.5 degrees. So you'll have something that looks like this. And you want to do that on all 4 pieces. Now that you have all these pieces drilled and countersunk and marked up, what you want to do is screw them or bolt them down onto your chuck. So we'll just go ahead and bolt these down here. And once you get these bolted onto your chuck, we'll move on to the next step. Now that you have your plywood pieces bolted onto your jaw chuck assembly here, you want to take your compass and set it for 5 inches and just place it in the center of the whole assembly. And of course you're going to have these pieces tightened in there, so your jaw is holding them tight. But draw yourself a circle just like that, and this should be a 10-inch circle, which it is. Now that you have that done, what we're going to do is we're going to take this assembly off of here, we're going to take it over to the scroll saw, and we're going to cut as close as possible to the outside lines of this circle. All 4 pieces are cut, so now go ahead and put them back on your chuck assembly. You've got all the pieces screwed onto your chuck. Now what you want to do is take it over to your lathe and put the whole assembly onto your headstock. I just want to point out here that when I say to you that the measurement here is 5 inches to give a full 10 inches across, that really depends on how large your lathe is. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. Anyway, we're going to move our tool rest assembly here up close to this, and what we want to do is, starting from the outside working in, I want to take my pencil and I want to mark 1/2-inch increments all the way along here. Keep the lathe running at low speeds here, guys. You don't want this thing to come blowing apart on you. So, like I said, 1/2-inch increments, starting here, and then here, just like that. Alright, so those are 1/2-inch increments, and we can darken those up a little bit. You hear that clicking. Well, that clicking is the unevenness of our pieces of plywood. So there are our circles. Now what I'd like to do here now is I would like to take my parting tool, and I just want to put a little groove at each one of those marks. Once I get that done, I'd like to take some sandpaper and smooth the outside edge of this and round these edges just a touch to take away the sharpness of them. So once we get those grooves cut and this rounded off, I'll come back and see you. You can see our grooves are cut there, and I know it's a little rough at this point, but we're going to sand it all up, so don't worry about that. And now we're going to go ahead, just like I said, and I'm going to take some sandpaper and I'm going to smooth out this outer edge and soften up the sharp edges here. Well, the grooves are cut, the edges are sanded. There's one more thing to do here, and that is, if you remember earlier, we drew these lines here at 22.5 degrees. What we want to do now is take these pieces off again, last time guys, honest, and in each one of these grooves at that line we want to drill a 1/8 of an inch diameter hole. So at each one of those 22.5 degree lines. Now don't get confused with this center line that you drew. We're done with that one. So just at the 22.5, a 1/8 of an inch hole, at every one of these grooves. Now that you've got all your holes drilled, go ahead and sand all pieces. Give them a good sanding, get rid of all your layout lines, any burrs from putting in these grooves, or from drilling out your countersink holes. So sand the front and back pieces and get them all nice and pretty. Well, now that everything is sanded up, what you want to do is, for the last time here now, reinstall these pieces onto your chuck. So you guys go ahead and do that. Now the last bit of material that you're going to need for this project is some rubber feet. And these are them right here. I don't know if you can see that. Normally they're mounted just like this, with the screw down through this section, and they screw up into your piece, and then it would end up sitting with the screw recessed. But for this project, you want to flip them around and put the washer on the back side, so that when they screw in, you can see there how they sit. They're going to have an upward angle to them. So you need 8 of these. And I got these at the local Home Depot here. Let me just show you the package. There you go. And all you're going to do, like I said, is install these upside down onto your Coles jaws here. And what the deal is here is that these mounting holes, or these holes that you have drilled here, are actually your adjustment holes for the feet that will hold your object that you're turning. So you can go ahead and screw these in. Now I'm going the 3rd hole out from the center, just because it's, it's kind of the middle of the road here. So put all 8 of them in, and then what we're going to do when we get all of the 8 of these in is I'm going to take this over to the lathe and I'm going to install it, and I'm going to show you guys how it works. Well, here we are at the lathe with our homemade Coles jaws installed here, and let me just show you how this works. I've got a walnut bowl. Now this bowl has already been turned and finished, but this is just for demonstration purposes. I don't have a freshly turned bowl in the shop right now. But what you want to do is you want to loosen off this assembly until it's going to fit your bowl. See how that sits there like that? And then tighten the assembly, just finger tight, holding your bowl firmly against your Coles jaws. And once you get it there like that, then however yours tightens up, if it's with a chuck key or this double bar system like mine has, just give it a little snug. Just like that. Now, you can turn your lathe on, and of course it holds your bowl here in place while you want to turn it. And you can just get your tool rest right up in there, and you can turn the tenon now that has been left on your bowl where normally you wouldn't be able to. And it holds it securely in place and does a great job. So there you go. Homemade Coles jaws. And there you have it. Coles jaws, homemade. Guys, these things retail in the woodworking stores for over $100 for like a jumbo jaw set. And I think the feet cost me $8, and well, 1/2-inch ply, you probably have that lying around your shop. But bottom line is, for roughly about $10, I got a set myself. Now, if you're turning bowls constantly, this is the sort of thing that you're always using, you might want to invest in one of the commercially available ones. But for me, I don't turn bowls that often, so one of these homemade ones is just perfect for me. It's cheap, it does a great job, but one thing I will warn you about, this is not for high-speed turning. I think some of the manufacturers recommend that like 1,000 RPM max on those jaws. I would say keep it below that. Low RPMs and light cuts and you'll be just fine. This thing will last you for, you know, forever and a day. And if not, take a little bit of time and make another set. Heck, it wouldn't even hurt to make 2 sets while you're doing all the setup and all the process anyway. So guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video.